We always point to the story of Jesus being angry in Jerusalem when he went into the temple and saw all the money changers. And he had actually even a physical demonstration of that anger when he overturned the money tables. So we know even from Jesus, who was without sin, that you can be angry in a justified way when you're confronting injustice, unfairness, unkindness, mistreatment. There is a time and a place for you to be angry in a healthy way.
Welcome to the Faithful and True podcast. I'm Randy Evert, your co-host, and today we'd like to bring to you a legacy episode featuring Dr. Mark Laaser and myself. Today's the seventh and final installment of the 7 principles of recovery. And today, Dr. Mark will be talking about anger and stating your needs. Here now is Dr. Mark Laaser.
Today we should talk about anger, a healthy ability to talk about anger, which will also involve the ability to state needs in a healthy way. But I think the main point for our show, the Men of Valor program, is that anger that's not expressed in healthy ways will generally lead to some form of acting it out, and that then leads to sexual sin.
And is it your experience then that men experience the cause of their anger can be a wide range of things?
Well, yeah, and that's also one of the themes of the show today, that here's one of the formulas that you can take with you, hopefully, and that is that anger to me is a symptom of an unexpressed need, unfulfilled need, a belief that you may have that some of your needs are not getting met. And we tend to think, I think, that anger is the result of fear and anxiety, that we're hurt in some way, we're frightened in some way. So, our survival mechanism in the brain kicks in and we go into fight or flight mode. I think that's true, that anger is sometimes the vehicle through, the brain chemical norepinephrine that we, will go into physical activity, meaning we'll fight or run away. But when I think about it at a deeper level, it is because we all have a need for safety. And if we're feeling that our need for safety is not being met, then that again shows us that anger can be the symptom of an unmet need.
Well, let's jump into that subject. I think you've come to the show this morning with a subject that's going to have much of our audience relating to. I think anger is one of those universal emotions that crop up in all of us.
That's right. So I do think, even as we're opening the show today, I would encourage all those who are listening, our audience, to, just think about, even today, even as you're listening to this, wherever you may be listening to this, what might you be angry about today? One of the exercises that we find helpful with just about everybody we work with is to, keep a journal and to journal feelings on a daily basis, journal reflections, awarenesses. And one of the feelings that you should be keeping track of on a regular basis is there something that you feel angry about? I think one of the first things that come up, because our audience is by and large a faith-based Christian audience, and one of the things to look at today is we're helping you get into this and hopefully process it for yourself, as we usually try to do on this show, is what are some of the messages to you when you were growing up about anger? What was anger like in your family? Now, some people that come into counseling, they grew up in kind of chaotic families where we had a guy at group last night who was talking about the fact that he grew up in an alcoholic home. Well, some alcoholics do get, rageful and their anger gets out of control when they've been drinking. So for him, seeing that modeled, he made, innumerable vows to himself that, he would never allow himself to get angry. Others of us grow up in calmer homes, but anger was tempting to come up with and feel. There would be religious messages. That was certainly true in my home. The scripture, Paul writes about not letting the sun set on your anger. There's a larger context to that passage about, do not sin in your anger. I think, some of us who grew up in those kind of Christian homes, we hear those messages. They're sometimes, a little out of context, meaning that we should not sin in our anger. And I think the interpretation of that occasionally has been we should not feel anger at all. So, whatever it was the case, maybe it is when you got angry when you were a kid, you somehow got punished. So I'm just asking those that would like to process this for themselves, without me going into a lot of different examples. What were the messages about anger that you grew up with? What was the teaching? What was being modeled? What were even the Christian messages that were taught, perhaps even at church, about the feeling and emotion of anger?
Well, I would imagine that those early years of development would greatly influence how you process anger, and whether it was healthy in your household to be able to display your anger. How would you display that anger? Because I think that there are certain situations that are certainly so frustrating that it brings out the anger in you, and yet is it productive in how you're communicating your anger to the person that you're trying to confront with whatever that point is?
Yeah, that's right. And in the second half of the show, I certainly want to talk about, kind of unpack a little bit what would be some ways to express anger in a healthy way. I think one of the distinctions we should probably make is that anger in itself is not unhealthy. It oftentimes reveals something that is perhaps not right. Is unfair, unkind, unjust, and we need at some level to be angry about it. We tend to call that kind of anger, I think, righteous anger. We always point to the story of Jesus being angry in Jerusalem when he went into the temple and saw all the money changers. And he had actually even a physical demonstration of that anger when he overturned the money tables. So we know even from Jesus, who was without sin, that you can be angry in a justified way when you're confronting injustice, unfairness, unkindness, mistreatment. There is a time and a place for you to be angry in a healthy way, and I want to get to that about what are some of the things that we might think about, and just as a preview for that, I'd say that if in fact anger is a symptom of an unmet need, then one of the ways to talk about our anger is to, in fact, talk about the needs that we have that are healthy needs.
One of the interesting aspects that I find about the emotion of anger is that it can be triggered on in so many different scenarios: at home, in a relationship, at work. Road rage, driving your car. I mean,
yeah, that's right.
Someone cutting you off, and all of a sudden you're sparked by anger. Right. So it's interesting when you have spoken in the past how anger itself can be a trigger, and that leads to other actions.
Yeah. Well, I think you're mentioning some of the examples of, kind of false symbols of, in other words, I happen to be one that, gets really pretty rageful in a car when people cut me off or, don't treat me what I perceive to be fairly. But it's really symptomatic of, much older, deeper anger about, unjust treatment or the feelings of being, left out, not included, some other kinds of things. So one of the things I think we all need to be careful of is to get too locked and loaded on, some of the symbolic triggers that are out there.
Sure.
And if we are, in that category of people who normally are calm, cool, and collected and tend to suppress or repress our anger, then it may get triggered in some symbolic way. So that's one thing for the people to be
Well,
thinking about.
as we go to take our break right now, is there a thought that you want the listeners to be concentrating on during the break that might help them get in tune with their own anger?
Well, I think one of the main thoughts that is very important for this show is that one of my questions has always been, with myself, given my history, and also with the men that I work with now, what is it that allowed you to cross your own moral boundaries? In other words, what is it that allowed you to get into sexual sin? And for myself, I firmly believe, and again, I've seen it countless hundreds of times, that the men who are men of faith, Christians, they commit sexual sin. They're generally very angry, and they generally have a larger feeling that some of their basic needs are not getting met, and that anger about that leads them into a feeling of entitlement. And entitlement is what pushes them across their own moral boundaries. There is a time and a place to be angry if we perceive that there is injustice in the world, there is stuff that is unfair, stuff that legitimately causes us to feel angry. That's not a bad emotion. Even in our religious beliefs to know that it's okay at times to be righteously angry about things.
As you work with the hundreds of men that you work with, is there a common theme to most of their anger? I know that you said that it's a common emotion in them, yeah. but is there a subject matter that is their key subject to be angry about?
Well, I think that honestly, a lot of the men who are married, for sure, they go into marriage with some unrealistic expectations that marriage is going to cure them of all of their sexual lust, their fantasies, their acting out histories, whatever exactly they have been. I think one of the features of anger is that there is usually a violation of expectations. So we have needs, and anger is a symptom of an unmet need. So we have needs. Around needs, we build up expectations that other people are going to meet those needs somehow. We don't state them necessarily specifically. We just kind of have them, often unconsciously. I know that when I went into marriage, I had expectations that simply the act of marriage, and certainly Debbie in specific, would take care of all of my loneliness, all of my stuff that I'd been dealing with ever since I was an adolescent. And therefore, when I discovered that marriage wasn't going to heal all of that, and it never can, then who was I angry at? Well, I was angry at marriage. I was angry at Debbie. I think that's a fairly common theme. I think a lot of the men that come through here who are married are, in fact, angry at their spouse. I think another common theme is that they're angry at God, and that's a difficult one to talk about. Most of the men who come here have prayed, sought, beseeched, repented, gone forward, been baptized, been saved in a variety of ways. And I think they've had expectations from God that God would remove all sin and lust from their life. And when they perceive that God hasn't delivered them in that miraculous way, then I think they wind up angry at God. And remember one of the points we left off with, which was if you perceive that someone else is not meeting your needs, then you're going to get angry at that person, and in this case, it's God. If your moral beliefs are based on a faith in God, then if you're angry at God, that allows you to kind of abandon some of those moral beliefs.
Now, does this lead us down the road that I know you're going to eventually be taking us here with finding ways, healthy ways to deal with that anger?
Yeah, that's right. Now, there are, lots of schools of therapy who have people physically get into their anger and, beat up pillows and that kind of thing. And I think occasionally it's good to do something physical because there's a lot about anger that is physical. And, to do something physical with that, is probably not a bad thing. But I would rather see people exercise or, do something that way. My favorite example of that therapeutic approach is in the movie Analyze This with Robert De Niro and Billy Crystal, where he's got some anger going at his father, and Billy Crystal puts a pillow down on the floor, and Robert De Niro, the mobster, takes out his gun and shoots the pillow. But I don't advocate that. I think it's good to do something physical, but I think the main thing is to learn how to be able to talk about your anger. We talk about journaling it, but then getting in a group of people that are willing to listen to it and not try to fix it. I think healthy groups are groups that are able to listen to your anger without just trying to get in there and solve it for you. Give you some simple solutions or some answers that you shouldn't feel that way. So I think talking about it is a really good thing. I think when you are able to learn how to express it, figure out physical ways to take care of it without being destructive, then I think you're able to get back to the idea that oftentimes anger is a violation of your expectation. Your expectations generally are founded around unmet needs that you have that probably go way back in your life, and the ultimately healthy way, I think, to deal with your anger is to be able to and learn how to state your needs in healthy ways.
Now, has it been your experience that that approach, as you're working one-on-one with a man, what's been the most effective way that you've been able to resolve their heightened anger?
Well, I think where I just left off a second ago, in that in all of our groups and most of my counseling sessions with people, I'm going to be asking them to state, like even when they start groups, start a session, what do you need today? What would you like to get from me today in counseling? What would you like tonight to get from this group? And a lot of the guys, when they're just starting to practice this, they get into kind of global things. I need you to pray for me. I need world peace. I need peace, comfort, and security in my life. These are all rather global things. Last night, one of the guys said, I am not looking forward to going home. It's kind of chaotic back there. What I really need tonight is some more company and fellowship. And I'd basically like some of the guys, or at least one of the guys, to go out for coffee with me after group. And so he had a need. The need was for fellowship. The need was for companionship. The need was for understanding, somebody to listen. Those are all basic human needs. But it needed to be stated in a concrete way. And so he had a specific idea. There's a coffee shop that the guys like to go to, and last night after group, I think 3 or 4 of them actually went out for coffee, and they continued to talk. And I'm sure there was no fixers in that group. They were just listening to each other, and that's oftentimes what we need.
Well, I would imagine that with today's topic, there's an awful lot of men out there that are hearing the show today who are pretty easily relating to these feelings of anger, and probably the frustration that most of us have with anger. I mean, frustrations with, I'm feeling this emotion, I feel justified in my anger.
Right.
Now, what do I do with it?
Well, that feeling of justification in the anger, I think, is based on the fact that the needs that anger is a symptom of are justifiable needs. We all have a need for safety. These are the 7 desires that Debbie and I talk about in our book, The 7 Desires. We have a need to be included, heard, affirmed, blessed, touched in healthy ways, all of the 7 desires. And so when we say we have justifiable anger, we generally mean that we have justifiable needs, that and those needs are not getting met, therefore we are angry about it. And so I think the key to getting in touch with your deeper anger is to get in touch with your deeper needs and being able to state those needs in healthy ways to people, including, your spouse, your friendships, your bosses, your employers, whoever it is in your life. And there is anxiety involved in stating needs, that we worry that if we state needs, people will think we're selfish, or they won't grant those needs, or whatever else it is. But practice, I think, is one of the main messages of today. getting in healthy groups, having healthy fellowship, having healthy friendships, being invited at times, whether it's in therapy, in a therapy group, in a support group, in a Bible study, to be able to state concretely. I think that's one of the keys today also, is to be able to state your needs. Get as concrete as you possibly can. Get specific. Today, I need a phone call. Today at 3 o'clock, I'm going into a meeting with my boss that I'm really worried about. I need you to call me today just to give me some encouragement.
Well, I think that kind of advice is going to spearhead a lot of conversations out there for the men's groups that listen to us on a regular basis, because anger can be in that same category as fear. It's just one of those things that sometimes men are hesitant to really open up about.
Right.
And I don't know whether it's our basic macho instinct or whatever it might be, fearful of displaying a sign of weakness. I think as men are listening to this today, hopefully it's going to enlighten them and let them know that they're not alone in this, in those feelings, and that talking about that, getting support, and finding these healthy ways of explaining or displaying their anger in a healthy way could be a very good thing.
Yeah, and I have a historical reference that I'd like to end with today.
Okay.
And I think it's a really wonderful example of what we're talking about today, at least to me. And I've always been fascinated by history. And today, as we're taping this show, it is the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington, and one of the most famous speeches of all time, the I Have a Dream speech. So when you think back to the civil rights movement, which is in reality still going on, but back in the 50s and early 60s, there it was really the heat of it, and you have to believe, and I was certainly alive then, and there was a lot of our African American brothers and sisters who were angry, don't you think? And they were angry about injustice, they were angry about unkindness, they were angry about intolerance, prejudice, historically slavery, and the people who made a difference in this culture of ours, like Dr. King, were, I'm sure, people who were very angry, about all of that. And what about that did they do in a healthy way? Well, we know from historical information that Dr. King was a student of Mahatma Gandhi, and studied his revolutionary work in India. And he believed in nonviolence, and he believed in not expressing that anger in violent ways. So, wherever he was involved, it was a peaceful march. And the March on Washington, by all accounts, was a peaceful march. It was a lot of very angry people marching peacefully. Now, one of the greatest speeches of all time, Martin Luther King got extemporaneous at the end. He departed from his prepared notes, and he just got into what I interpret to be a Holy Spirit moment. And he stated the needs. And the way he stated needs was, he said, I have a dream. And, in that dream, as he outlined it, and so poetically, as only a great preacher can sometimes do, he stated, what my needs are, that one day, all children could sit down at a table and, have fellowship with each other, that kind of thing. I mean, I can't get into all the speech. I'm just saying it's a wonderful example of how, people were angry at injustice. They peacefully did something about it, and they stated needs. One of the needs they had in those days was the, equal voting rights, for example. And I could go on with this historical reflection. I think great progress, great healing, great coming together is usually people being able to channel their anger in peaceful ways and talk about what they need.
Thank you for joining us today on the Faithful and True podcast. You've been listening to the late Dr. Mark Laaser and myself as we discussed the seventh and final installment of the 7 Principles of Recovery. Today, you listened to us talk about anger and stating your needs. We hope that this episode has been beneficial to you, and we hope that you'll visit our website, faithfulandtrue.com, where you'll find many resources available to you. There's over 550 podcasts like this one, as well as the information and online registration for our 3-day intensive workshops. We offer the Men's Journey Workshop every month, and then on a quarterly basis we have the Women's Journey Workshop, and the same with the 2 Couples Journey Workshops. So we hope you'll check all of those out. In the meantime, we hope that you'll find that the resources on our website will be beneficial to you, and that if you have any questions about our services, you'll call us here at Faithful and True. In the meantime, we hope this coming week will be a week for you that's filled with many blessings and with great vision.